Welcome to day 2 integrative learning. So far this week we have been working on learning how to animate objects in 3D space, as well as use cameras and scenes and move those cameras around. So this lesson is going to take that and hopefully push it to a little bit of a higher level. So we are sitting here in After Effects. I'm going to go over to my project panel. You guys should have already downloaded all of the assets from FSO and you should know where you had saved those out. So here from my project panel, I'm just going to double click. I'm going to navigate to the location that I have my files. Yours are going to be in a different place. But we're going to find the file called oceandrive.psd. This is a layered Photoshop file. So as always, when we want to bring in a layered Photoshop file, we're going to select it. We're going to go down to the bottom and choose Import As. We're going to change that over to Composition, Retain Layer Sizes, and then we're going to click Open. We're going to go ahead and just click OK right here. We're going to leave Editable Layer Styles on. And let's go ahead and double click our composition and just take a look and see what we have here. So we've actually got several different things going on here. We have a background back here at the very back. That's just like a dark purplish blue kind of background. Then we've got this layer with these Art Deco hotels from Ocean Drive and South Beach of Miami. We got our pretty little yellow Lambo here. We have one wheel for the Lambo. Not two, but just one. And we also have this little palm tree right here. So what we want to do with this scene is we want to animate the car. We want to make it drive through the scene. But we also want to create a move for the camera that will make the camera look like it's kind of on a dolly track, maybe on the sidewalk across the street, sort of moving through that scene as well. So it's going to be a little bit interesting in the way that we go about that. So if you guys would, let's just follow along. So first thing we're going to do, a couple things here. We need to set things up so that we can actually see what things are going to look like in 3D space. So you guys already know how to do that. For each one of those layers, we're going to turn on the switch right there that indicates its 3D capabilities. The background, let's go ahead and turn that on. We may come back and turn that back off. It may not be all that important that we do that. So right at this moment, let's go ahead. We've got our main view up here. Don't forget, you guys do have the ability to switch to a 2-view horizontal, which is what I've done right here. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to maximize that for a second. Over here's my camera view, or my current active camera view, which I don't have a camera in the scene yet. And over here on the left-hand side is top. And don't forget that when you click on these two different sections of the panel, you get these little blue triangles that show up in the corner. That's going to tell you which side of that panel that you're working with. And that will allow you to make a decision down here how you want each panel to be viewed. So when you select that panel and you come down here and you change this, that panel will be affected only. This panel over here, when I have that one selected, will be affected only. So what we want to do is we want to go ahead and kind of imagine that these are almost like paper or cardboard cutouts. And we want to move things around in 3D space just a little bit here. So let's go ahead, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to grab that background and we're going to push it back. So don't forget, when we talked about moving objects around, you do have your 3 axes right here. Your blue is your Z, your red is your X, and your green is your Y. Always going to be that way. So what we can do at this point is we're going to go ahead and we're going to click on the Z axis and we're going to push that background into the back. And you will notice over here on the right, it did get smaller. We can go ahead and scale that back up, but we'll worry about all that here in just a few minutes. Next thing up, we've got our hotels. We want to scoot those back in 3D space as well. We just want to push those back just a little bit. Now we got our Lambo, we got our front wheel on the Lambo, and we got the palm tree. So I'm going to leave the wheel and the Lambo alone, and I'm going to pull the palm tree forward just a little bit. Again, we're going to worry about placement and how all this stuff is going to kind of work out here in just a few minutes. But we've kind of got a good start going with this. We really don't need to worry about a camera quite yet because there's a couple things that we want to do first. So I'm going to switch back to a single view here. You can keep it on a double view if you want to. But the main thing we want to worry about right at this moment is we want to get our wheel on our Lamborghini to move. So let's go ahead and begin the process of doing that. You guys have done this before. You know how this works. Oh, and by the way, I am working in a composition. Take a quick look at my comp settings so that you guys can see this. I am working in a 5-second timeline. So if you guys haven't edited that and made it into a 5-second timeline, go ahead and do that now. It does default based on the size of these elements that come in as a custom composition size. Let's go ahead and change that as well. we're going to switch that over to our standard HDTV 1080 2997, which is really going to change things over here, but we'll fix that here in just a couple of minutes. So there we go. So we've got our car, we have our hotels, we've got our background, we've got our palm tree. So the first thing we want to do is we want to make the wheel on the Lamborghini, we want to make it rotate. So we're going to press the letter R to reveal our rotation properties. And we want to rotate that wheel on its Z axis. So it's going to be Z rotation. My current time indicator is sitting here on 0, so I'm going to click the stopwatch for Z rotation. I'm going to move all the way down to the end of the timeline, and I'm going to make it go 5 rotations. So let's take a quick look and just see how that's going to look. And it looks like it's going backwards to me. It is. So guess what we're going to have to do? We're going to have to change that number. Let's go back over to our front wheel. Let's reveal our rotation properties again. We're going to move down to the end of the timeline where that keyframe is sitting right there. And instead of 5, we're going to set it to -5. And that should fix our little problem right there. Now our wheel is rotating in the correct direction. So pretty cool. So you guys know how to fix this little problem. We've only got one wheel. We want to go ahead and we want to have a second wheel. So I'm going to select my front wheel. I'm going to press Command and the letter D to duplicate it. And I'm just going to click on the X axis right here. Let me zoom in so you guys can see that. I just want to scoot it back on the X axis just like that and move it into position inside the rear wheel well. So let's just take a quick look and make sure everything is working the way that it should now for both of my wheels. And things are looking really good. I got both wheels moving. So pretty nice here. So that's the first thing we needed to animate. Oops, sorry about that. Got a runaway mouse. So let's go ahead and let's parent both of the wheels to the body of the Lamborghini just so that we can remember to do that. So go ahead and grab your parenting pick whip for the front wheel 2, which is really now your back wheel, and then grab the parenting pick whip for the front wheel, which is your front wheel. If you want to, you can go ahead and rename that front wheel to 2 rear wheel, something like that. Just make it so that we know what everything is. So now at this point, as we move the Lamborghini through the scene, the wheels are going to go with it and they're going to rotate. They're going to do exactly what we want them to do. So the next thing we want to do is we kind of want to figure out how we want things to function and how we want things to move here. So let's go ahead and let's put a camera into our scene. So I'm going to click the layer icon up at the top and choose new camera. You can go about it that way. Another way you can go about it is if you have a blank area down here at the bottom in your layers, if you just right click and choose new and camera right there. So we're in our camera settings. I am going to use a one node camera. Don't forget, a one node camera only has kind of one way of moving it around and pointing it. The 2-node camera has 2. We're just going to keep it simple and just use a 1-node camera here in this instance. Let's call our camera Ocean Drive Camera. And I'm going to leave mine on a 24 millimeter. You guys do have the ability to choose different focal lengths right here. I'm going to stick with a 24 millimeter. I'm not going to mess with any of this stuff down here. I'm not going to turn on enable depth of field or any of that stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And I want to go ahead here under my choice for what I'm viewing here, and I want to select Ocean Drive Cam. So I'm actually looking at my scene through the view of my camera at this point. And I'm going to notice a couple of things. I am going to go ahead and turn on my tidal action safe here because I'm going to need it in a second. But I'm going to move my camera through my scene. The first thing you're going to notice is I really don't have enough backdrop or enough of my background. When I say backdrop, I mean the hotels here. I really don't have enough of that to fill up the scene at this point. So let's go ahead and fix one problem at a time. Let's go ahead and take our background. I'm going to select it. I'm going to reveal my scale properties, and I'm just going to scale it way up, as big as I need it to be. I'm going to go up to maybe like about 300% because it's just solid colors. You're really not going to see any of that. Once I get it into place, into scale, I'm going to grab my Y axis and I'm just going to scoot that up until I now have a street back down there at the bottom, again, just like I did before. The other thing that I need to deal with here is I don't have enough hotels to really fill up the whole thing. So I'm going to select my Art Deco hotels. I'm going to scoot them over. Sorry about that. I want to make sure I grab on the X axis. I'm going to scoot them over to the left, and I'm going to go until the right side of this one is sitting right here in the center. And then what I can do is I can just select that layer and press Command and the letter D. And I can just duplicate that and scoot a copy over to the right. And they actually match up pretty well right here. So I've got a little bit more to work with right here. We're going to mess around with the palm trees here in just a little while. We want to get some movement happening here so that we can kind of figure out how we want things to occur at this point. We're not going to animate the position of either of the sets of the Art Deco hotels, so I'm not going to really worry about parenting or renaming those or anything. We might have to come back and work with the background a little bit more later. We might change some zoom on the camera so we see less of the background or whatever, but we're not going to worry about that too much right at this moment. So what we do want to do is we want to animate the position of our camera. We have our camera in the right place. We just want to position it left to right in a linear fashion. So I'm sitting here at 0 on the timeline. So I'm going to reveal the position properties for my camera. Don't forget we're working in 3D space, so now you have a third dimension to work with here. You have X, Y, and Z. The direction that we want to move the camera, let me zoom out here and change. I'm going to switch back over to a 2 view horizontal. And I want to show you here in the left panel what's going on here. So here's my camera, and I want to move my camera along its X-axis. So I'm sitting here at 0. I have my camera here. I have it selected. I'm just going to grab the X-axis of the camera, and I'm going to scoot it to the right until I get to the end of the hotels there. I might want to zoom in a little bit later. I can kind of play around with this a bit later and decide how I want this to look, but I just don't want to push the camera further than like that. I don't want to see where the hotels end over there. So I'm going to start off about right there. And I'm going to click my stopwatch for position. I'm going to grab my current time indicator and move all the way down to the end of the timeline. And I'm going to grab that X-axis on the camera and I'm going to scoot in the opposite direction. I'm going to scoot it over to the left. And again, I don't want to go so far that I lose the end of that building right there. So let's go ahead and preview it. I'm going to have this window right here selected, and I'm going to get my current time indicator back to 0, and I'm going to press 0 on the timeline. I'm sorry, spacebar, and make my render preview play there. So this is actually looking pretty good. This is working out kind of nice, and you can see that there is some parallax because you can see the palm tree. I'm not animating the position of the palm tree or any of the hotels or anything. I'm just moving the position of the camera. So you can tell that that difference in Z space where we moved everything and spread everything out really is working for us. In case you guys don't remember that, again, here's my camera. This object right here is my palm tree. My car is sitting right here. The hotels are right here. And then that blue backdrop is back there in the very back. So let's go ahead and let's make our car move as well. So we've got both of the wheels parented to the car, so the only thing we need to animate the position property for is our Lambo. So let's go ahead and reveal the position properties. Again, for the Lambo, we're moving left to right, so we're going to animate the X-axis. So I'm just going to grab the X-axis, and I'm going to drag it over to the left so my car is outside of my field of view. Again, I'm sitting right here at 0 on my timeline. I'm going to click the stopwatch for position, and again, I'm going to move my current time indicator all the way down to the end of the timeline. I need to grab my car and scoot it back over into my scene. Because my camera's moved, my car is further over here to the right now. So I might have to, don't forget if you've got your selection tool active, if you just press your space bar, you can actually kind of move around within that window. So I had to kind of move that a little bit until I could see it. Make sure you click on the X-axis for the car. Now I can pan that window back over and I can drive my car straight on out the other side, just like it would be if I was on Ocean Drive. So here we go. Here's my animation at this point. My car is driving on Ocean Drive. So pretty awesome. Things are looking great. This is really kind of headed in the exact direction that we wanted to. So a couple things we want to do here. It's going to look a lot prettier if we have a little bit more of a sense of depth. So I can do that by kind of positioning my palm tree and maybe scaling it, maybe moving it around a little bit, but even making a few more of them and putting them in little clusters along here. So I'm back over here. My current time indicator is on 0. I'm going to move this palm tree. I'm going to scoot it over to the right, and I'm going to move it down a little bit. I don't want to see where the base of the palm tree ends, somewhere around right there. And I'm going to select it, and I'm going to duplicate it a couple of times. 1, 2. So my first copy right here, I've got palm tree 2, and palm tree 3. I'm going to go to palm tree 2. I'm going to scoot it over to the left just a little bit using the x-axis. Then I'm going to use the z-axis. I'm going to push it back in z-space just a little bit. Again, I might need to scoot it down vertically just a touch because I don't want to see the end of it. I really don't want it to disappear. For my third copy, I scooted that one back in z-space. This one I might do actually a couple of different things. Maybe I'll kind of move it forward a little bit. I'll move it over to the left so it kind of straddles those two. And maybe I'll also reveal its scale properties, and maybe I'll scale it up just a touch. So now I've got 3 of them right there, kind of in a nice little cluster. The cool thing that's going to happen though is as my camera moves by, you can see what's going on right there. Because they are in different places in z-space, I get a lot of parallax right there, which makes it really, really beautiful for my illusion of 3D. So I'm going to move on down my timeline just a bit. And I'm going to go ahead. This is going to get a little bit messy here at first, but I've got my 3 palm trees right there. I'm going to select all 3 of them, and I'm going to press Command D to duplicate them again. After Effects does, as it duplicates multiple layers, it does kind of keep them in position. So the 3 that I've duplicated are kind of alternating right here. I can just click any one of those and just drag it up on top of this uppermost one and get all 3 of them together. So now that I've got all 3 palm trees duplicated and selected, my new copies, which are 4, 5, and 6, are all still selected. I can just click up here on any of those X axes of those 3 palm trees and just move my cluster of 3 down here just a little bit. Something like that. Let's see how that's going to look as I scroll through. That's going to look kind of cool. So again, I'm going to move all the way down to the end of my timeline, and maybe I'll take those 3, and maybe I really don't want all 3 of those. Maybe I'll just duplicate a couple of those. So I'm going to grab 5 and 6. I'm going to press Command D. I'm going to click those and drag them up here to the top so I can see them pretty well. And I'm just going to scoot these couple over here to the left. So this is your opportunity if you want to make any changes to any of these and reposition any of them or anything. This is a good opportunity to do that. So whatever you'd like to do there to make things look really nice, it's totally up to you. But it really does kind of add something when we have these little clusters of palm trees as we're kind of cruising by. So what I'm going to do at this point, now that I've got all my palm trees spaced out, take a few seconds if you need to do that for yourself. I'm going to switch back to a 1 view. I am going to turn off my title action safe, and I'm going to preview this in full screen just so that you guys can see how this is going to look as we animate it. So again, the parallax, those little groupings of palm trees kind of moving in front of and behind each other, really does make a big difference in creating this illusion of 3D space. Pretty awesome. I'm going to get back out of that zoom in view right there. A couple other things that I'd like to do here to maybe make my composition look a little bit nicer. There's nothing like a night on South Beach on Ocean Drive. A little bar hopping there, something like that. But you know, it's not going to be the same without some beautiful twinkling stars in the sky. So let's go ahead and let's use an effect to create some twinkling stars in the sky. So we're going to start off by creating a layer solid. We're going to go up under the layer pull down menu at the top. We're going to choose layer, new, solid. And we're going to call this layer solid twinkling stars. We can make it comp size. That's totally fine, and we can click OK. All that's great. So right at this moment, my layer solid is black, so I can't see anything. I'm going to come over to my effects and presets, and I'm going to look for particle. And I'm going to grab this second one down here, this one called Particle World, and I'm going to put that over onto that layer solid right there. So now instead of twinkling stars in the sky, we have a sparkler going crazy on Ocean Drive, and that's really not what we want. But we're going to use this particular particle plugin to create the illusion of some little twinkling stars up in the sky. So first things first, up here in the effects controls, I'm going to twirl down this section called Guides and Grids. This particular one comes with a whole bunch of this stuff, and I just go through and turn every bit of it off because I really truly just don't want to see any of that. The next thing that I'm going to do right at this moment is kind of creating these little lines, and that's definitely not what I want it to do. So I'm going to come down to the section called particle, and I'm going to change it from line to star, which now I've got all these beautiful little golden stars. I'm going to click in my color chips right here underneath the particle section, and I'm going to make the stars white. Both of those colored chips, I'm going to make them white. So now I have little teeny tiny white stars. I'm not going to do a whole lot more here quite yet because I need to spread these out and get them to do what I want them to do before I know exactly how I want them to look. So we're going to go back to, I'm done with guides and grids, we're going to go back to producer. In producer you have the ability to move it around in position in X, Y, and Z. And you also have the ability to expand or contract the producer. Right at this moment the producer's right in the center, and it's kind of like a hose is just squirting these out of it. So what we want to do is we want to spread that producer out really, really wide. So I'm looking at the X and the Y radius for the producer. For X, I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to drag it to the right until I spread those out really nice and wide, just like that. And for my radius of my Y, I'm going to do a little bit of that as well. So now I've got those spread out. Rather than them all coming from the same location, it's right at this moment, it kind of looks like they're snowing. We're going to fix that here too in just a second. But things are kind of headed in the right direction. So we're going to go down to physics. We don't want it to snow stars. So we're going to take our velocity to 0. We are going to take our gravity to 0. And we're going to take our extra to 0. And some of these things I'm not even sure if they really make any difference or not, but I'm just going to make everything 0. So now I just have stars that are kind of twinkling on and off, and that's actually very much closer to what I was looking for. Just a couple little things I've got to do to make this really look nice. So we're going to back up here just a bit, and we're going to take a look at birth rate up here. We're going to dial that back significantly so that we don't have quite as many. And we can also drag the longevity back a bit, and that's going to slow down or reduce the number that we have on screen at any given time. So there you go. You can see what's happening right there. Probably going to want to go even lower on that. Something like that. We just want a few of them. We don't want to go crazy with it. So there we go. We've got some beautiful twinkling stars in the sky. All that is looking really, really sweet. So at this moment, our stars are sitting up here in front of everything. So let's go ahead and grab them. We're going to drag them down, and we're going to place them between the Art Deco hotels and the background. So the only problem with that is, you guys can see we haven't turned on 3D for this comp, and we really don't need to. It's not important. But what we do want to do, you can see the little red handles here for the edges of that comp. We want to scoot that comp up so that we only have stars up at the top. So you can just click on any one of them and just scoot them straight up. I'm going to hold down the shift key while I move them up into the sky, just like that. The other issue that I have is the way that this plugin works. There are no stars at the very beginning. So it actually takes us moving down the timeline before that starts to generate stars. So what we're going to do is we're just going to click on the solid part of that track, that layer solid that we just created, and we're going to scoot it over to the left pretty significantly like that. And that's going to mean that even here at 0, we're going to have some stars in the sky. What we do have to worry about, though, is we've kind of left this gap down here at the bottom. So we just got to grab that track and scoot it over to the right. And now we have stars in the sky from start to finish. Now they're a little crazy. It's honestly looking a little Christmassy with that many stars up there and them being that bright and that significant. So we definitely can go back into that effect, and we can kind of take a look at some of the things here. First thing up, we can take a look under particle, and we can look at birth size. We can scale that back and make them significantly smaller when they start off. And we can also look at death size, and we can make them significantly smaller when they die. And that's really going to make things look much, much, much nicer here. So there you go. We've got some beautiful twinkling stars. We've created a magical night on South Beach. So one other thing I wanted to show you guys, we're going to talk about this a little bit during our next lecture, But one last thing I did want to show you is something called depth of field. And what that is, if you've ever used a real camera with interchangeable lenses, a DSLR, or even an old-fashioned SLR that actually shot with film, what that is, it's an area, a distance from the lens that is going to be in focus. So with our camera selected right here, we can twirl that down. We're not worried about transform, so I'm going to twirl that back up. But we are looking here at camera options. So I'm going to twirl that down. And you have the ability to turn on depth of field when you actually create the camera, or you can just wait and you can turn it on here. So I'm going to turn that on here just by clicking on the word off. That toggles it on. It's probably not going to change much of how you see things up here at this moment. I am going to switch back to a 2 view so that you can see what I'm talking about. So right at this moment, the camera's got a really kind of a broad field of view. A couple things that we can do here, and this will drastically change the way that our composition looks. Maybe you're going to like that, maybe you won't, but we can change the zoom here. If we increase that, we are going to actually be moving the camera in and zooming the camera in on our scene. I actually kind of think that might look a little bit nicer. It may make me think that maybe my palm trees are a little too big and I want to come back later and scale those down. But that's going to be totally up to you. The other thing that we've got here is we've got focus distance. And as we drag that to the right and to the left, take a look at this panel over here and notice how we've got the cone that is the field of view of our camera, which is all the way up here. And we've got this line right here. So we've also got, as we change focus distance, it's going to move that line that's up closer in and out. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to shrink that back just a little bit so that my hotels and my car are within those two boundaries. My hotels are back here and my car's right here. Then you probably don't see a whole lot of difference over here. The thing that really has a huge impact on depth of field is your aperture. So as you drag that number to the right, you're going to notice that some things are going to happen. And as we drag that further and further to the right, you guys are going to notice that a lot of things are going to start going out of focus. Like you can see these palm trees up here. I'm going to switch back to 1 view so that you can see that these palm trees up here out of focus. The hotels back there have fallen out of focus. So this number is actually the one that's going to help you decide what is going to be in focus and what's not going to be. So I'm going to drag that back down just a little bit lower so that I have a little bit of blur up here, a little bit of blur back there, but my car is going to look really pretty nice and pretty sharp. So now when I play this back, it is actually going to blur those other things that are outside of the field of view, or the area where the camera is going to be in focus, which is a really pretty neat thing. It's kind of odd because even like this palm tree up here is a little bit out of focus. Things like this are going to slow down your renders quite a bit, so just be prepared for it. There are plenty of times where I will take my display here off of full resolution and drop it back to half or a third or a quarter, just to make life easier when I'm working out animation and things like that. Then when I render it out, it will come out in the correct full-on high resolution version that we like. But that's pretty much it for our lesson at this point. Just know that anytime you want to move things around in 3D space, you kind of have to treat this almost as if it is a cardboard cutout or a pop-up book or something like that. As you place things in Z space, then you can control where they move, if they move at all. You can control where the camera moves, and you can also control how the camera behaves as it interacts with those other things.